think I've got everything masked. All right, just finished up with the Mr. Surfacer 12,000 on the bottom here, and everything looks pretty good except for this here, and same thing on the other side. That one's really bad. So I filled those areas in with the putty, and then I also filled in between those doors with the putty, and I think that's going to work, and I kind of pushed it down in there. Yeah, I think those engine nacelles are better now. All right, and here's the black Mr. Surfacer. I'm not really seeing any flaws. All right, I've got the first color down, and that's this dark gold gray testers. And yeah, I think the coverage is pretty nice. And those are the Bombay doors. All right, so I'm starting to mask for the olive drab, and I'm using the Tamiya curvy tape. And the references here, I'm just going off the instructions. So just looking at that and trying to mimic it on each side. And then I have to carry that line across the tops of those doors. Okay, there's the olive drab, and also did the bombs and those doors. And this seemed just, there was too much variation. This was so much deeper. So again, just put the putty in there and smoothed it with my finger, let it dry. Came back and kind of, just sanded, buffed it with that stick. Okay, I've got this mask for the invasion stripes. These spaces basically on top and the bottom. I think I'll hit this with a very light coat of gray primer first. What I did is outline that space, and then I'll do the white and then mask the white and come back with the black. And unmasked all the glass, and of course, as I was unmasking this, it popped off, and that front gun broke off. And you can see the flashlight here. I had to look around for it on the floor. I do have to go back with the green here and there and touch it up. And actually, in some spots, I kind of don't mind because, again, as I've mentioned in a couple of other guys' comments of their videos with invasion stripes, these were applied by hand. So those lines aren't going to be perfect anyway. So I'm okay with a little bit, but some of these are, it's too much. And now I just did that yellow stripe with the Mr. Color yellow. And then over here on the workbench, I stained that base that I'm going to use with my go-to, the semi-transparent Provincial from Minwax. I won't show it yet, but so got the right size on that. I'll print this out again, and now I can, cut it out to size. Doing detail painting now and just working my way through these various colors for the details. For instance, the gunmetal on all the guns. So a white light on either side of the tail there, and then a white light up in here, and then red lights, a red light there, and red lights on the bottom. Exhaust on the exhausts. Now I'm working on those lights, and I guess there's yellow, red, green, and white lights. Also have that front back on. Right, so I'm done with the clear coat, and yeah, I just used another piece of acrylic rod to hold it and stuck it in the vise. But yeah, it's looking pretty good, and I have to say that front door came out exactly the way I had hoped. So yeah, it looks closed now. Touched up inside of the Bombay. That all looks good. So now I'll take it over to the bench and put on decals. Starting in on these decals, and kind of right off the bat I ran into an issue. And if you look at that tail number, it's does not go all the way across that tail. I bought this Kits World set and started using the numbers off of there, the tail numbers, and you can see how small that is. But when I went to put it on there, way bigger, and were too big. They went all the way across there, which it just doesn't do. So I used the kit decals for that. Now this nose art is definitely better and more accurate than this. So I'm, going to use that, but I'm hoping, well, let's see. I hope that fits. All right, I have this reference of the actual plane, and that nose art, and I think I'm gonna be okay. I think that's pretty close. And same thing on the other side. So I just hit that with the salva set, and that one's drying on that side. All right, the surprises on these decals keep coming. So as I looked at the instructions there, I'm like, okay, that insignia basically goes right up under that rear window. And when I put it on there, it overlapped into the opening for the gun port. And so I went to my references, and sure enough, if you could see there, that right point of the bottom of the star on the right side is gone when those doors are fully open. Maybe I'll just slice it ever so slightly right there at that point on each side, and then as it dries and sucks down, it'll have a place to break. Other than getting all these decals down, yeah, those up front look really good. I'm pretty happy. They named the engines Eve and Gale, which is kind of cool. So those are looking good. That all nestled down. I put these back ones in there and hit that with the salva set, and yep, you can see all I did was touch that with the knife and like make a slit in it, and it sucked it up both ways. A couple of clear coats down on there, and then I've been using a bunch of washes, and I've tried a new technique, the sponge with the silver, to create, I overdid it in some spots, I think, but this thing is supposed to be super duper beat up, to create these chipping effect. And I looked at a couple of different chipping effects. The hairspray one appeals to me, but I would have had to start before I started laying colors down, and I didn't. So, but this thing is supposed to be, you know, pretty heavily weathered. I may have overdone it here and there. It's my first time, you know, working with some of these techniques. You can judge for yourself. But, you know, I wanted to give some of these things a try because I haven't done a World War II plane in a long time, especially one as beat up as this. So I thought I'd give a few of these techniques a try. So now I have the bombs put together and a couple of these, those guns to put in, and the doors to put on. And then I'll probably weather those propellers to the same degree before I put those on. So now it's just finishing up these details, and then I'll be done. It's impossible to know what altitude the B-26 Marauder crews flew their missions over Utah Beach on the northern coast of France. Cornelius Ryan of London's Daily Telegraph was with the officers of the 386th Bomb Group as the group commander briefed them. You may have to bomb as high as 12,000 feet or lower than 1,000 feet. The cloud height will determine this. In a 1980s interview, Captain James Wilson, flight leader of the 386th, recounted as cocksure as the young Marauder pilot of a half-century earlier, "We'd have gone to 500. Oh yeah, we'd have gone to 500 if we had to." In fact, the B-26 Marauder had been built to fly just the sort of mission it was handed on D-Day. In 1939, the Glenn L. Martin Company of Baltimore, Maryland designed a medium bomber that the U.S. Army could use to destroy bridges, rail depots, airfields, and ships. The vertical stabilizer was huge, while it had a slender fuselage, clear plastic nose, tail drawn to a point, and wings set high in the fuselage, each with a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney radial engine beneath in a streamlined nacelle. The Marauder had a maximum speed of 286 miles an hour, with a combat range of over 1,100 miles. It could fly up to 20,000 feet carrying 4,000 pounds of bombs in 2 bays, and was protected by 50 caliber Browning machine guns mounted all around the plane. The Army ordered 200 straight off the drawing board for low altitude missions. The B-26 cockpit had little elbow room, and the instrumentation was less sophisticated than that of a light airplane today. While it did have armor-plated seats, the co-pilot had a yoke and pedals, but no instruments of his own. The bombardier crouched ahead of the cockpit in a goldfish bowl so small he couldn't wear a parachute, and his knees brushed the plexiglass nose as he peered into his bomb sight. Behind the cockpit was the navigation station and radio panel. The bombardier usually doubled as navigator, commuting from one task to the other by crawling over the co-pilot. The radio was operated by the top turret gunner, who crawled through 2 bulkheads in the bomb base to reach his panel. Behind the bomb bay were 3 gunners who handled the top turret, waist, and tail positions. The turrets were so cramped, the gunners also seldom wore parachutes. The challenge of D-Day was to put a mass of men and machines on the narrow stretch of coast, pitting them against an enemy that was prepared and well dug in. 5 beaches were selected, from east to west, codenamed Sword, Juno, Gold, Omaha, and Utah. Parachute and glider troops would secure the eastern and western flanks. D-Day, a term denoting a benchmark on the calendar for a military operation. Bomb this bridge on D-1, advance to that river on D+2. The same was true of H-hour, the moment of attack, set for Utah Beach at 6:30 a.m. We were briefed that morning about 3 a.m., Jim Wilson said. When the group commander told us what was happening and that parachuters had already landed, everyone cheered. At the target, daybreak would come at 5:45 a.m., H-45. The first Marauder group, the 344th, was to cross the shore at H-25, blasting German strongholds in concert with Navy guns, and the last group would cross at H-5. That group would be the 386th, a great honor, as Wilson explained. Bomb early, and the Germans would have time to raise their heads. Bomb late, and the U.S. 4th Division would be hit by American bombs. Their window was 2 minutes, 6:23 to 6:25 a.m. When we took off, it was raining and it was dark, said Wilson, and we had maximum effort, which was 54 planes. And 54 planes ended up in pretty good formation before daylight. 8 Marauder groups were airborne. Some 300 Marauders approached Utah Beach. When we flew over the fleet, Wilson said, it was the most incredible sight, just thousands and thousands of ships. Meanwhile, on the east side of Cherbourg Peninsula, German Lieutenant Arthur Janke was in command of 75 troops with an arsenal including 50mm guns from French armored cars, 2 75mm cannon, and one of the much-feared German 88 anti-aircraft guns. As German author Paul Carl Schmidt recounts in his book Invasion, They're Coming, then a wave of twin-engine bombers was coming in from the sea in impeccable east-to-west fly-past formation. They're going to cross the coast north of us, Janicki thought aloud. But he was hardly finished speaking when to his horror the first wave wheeled south and flying down the coast made straight for his strong point. The bomb bay doors opened, Schmidt's account continued, and almost at once the bombs came tumbling out, dropping with their curious wobbling motion. An explosion buried Janicki in sand, but he dug himself out. So did most of his men, though their guns were badly hit. The 88mm cannon fired only 1 round before it died, though that shell may have brought down the one and only Marauder lost from the 344th Bomb Group that exploded over Utah Beach. Bringing up the rear, the 386th Bomb Group leveled out at 1,250 feet. As we approached, Jim Wilson recalled, the landing barges were circling, and as we cleared the target area, every one of them broke for the beach. One of the tail gunners said it was an incredible sight as the barges hit the beach. So it was just like that, he said with a snap of his fingers. Indeed, Utah Beach had been a snap for the 300 Marauders, as only one had been shot down over the beach. They dropped 550 tons of bombs, which exploded German landmines, silenced their cannon, pulverized their dragon's teeth, and created hundreds of D-Day foxholes for the U.S. 4th Division Infantry, who lost less than the number killed in a practice landing in Britain. It was a miracle of warfare, and at least some of the credit goes to the Martin B-26 Marauder, bombing at some of the lowest levels of the war, and paving the way for the greatest military operation in history. There it is on the shelf, at least temporarily. As I said, I probably want to hang it up on the ceiling, but I have to think about it with that wire up on top. So what I've done in the past is I kind of just make a cradle for it, more or less, out of fishing line. Yeah, and then put it around those wings and, you know, hang it that way, and then you can kind of position it. But for now, I think I'll leave it this way until I kind of figure out what I want to do. But what a blast. I haven't done 1-48 in a long time, and I really enjoyed it. It's in some ways easier to work with than 1-72 because things are bigger and you can do more detail. But in other ways, just because of the sheer size, it's more challenging. And I'm also happy with, you know, some of the new techniques I tried, with questionable success on some, but you know, it's my first foray into a few of these things. So yeah, and you know, all of it couldn't be for a better commemoration. So again, I want to thank Charlie Mack and Al Wood for hosting the 80th anniversary of D-Day group build, and really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. So as always, thanks for watching and happy modeling.